drier wheat crops over the United States and the perspectives for the corn crop in Argentina and Brazil and the impact on prices. Jerry Gidel is ready to assess all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had a week where corn and wheat have rallied early in the week, but after that, they corrected on Friday, and we have had a soybean rally on Friday. What do you think the market's watching at this time? Do you think they're watching the improved crop conditions in Argentina?
Oh, well, there's been definitely some improvement there. There's also been things that have been delayed on getting some their corn and soybean harvest moving along. Actually, it's mostly soybean, I should say, at this point. From there, the world weather has definitely had an impact, but I think the interesting factor has been that the U.S. Plain states have really got in focus here on the conditions, really kind of west of I-35 that goes from, it doesn't go in Nebraska, but it's kind of west of Topeka and going northbound into Kearney, Nebraska, and across into Colorado, western Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, and definitely parts of western Texas. There hasn't been any rains in that direction. There's been some threats of it, but most of the time it seems like these fronts are developing east of eastern Kansas and eastern Oklahoma and not really hitting the areas that need it. That's part of the reason why this market in the wheat market has been strong most of the week and actually had a very impressive performance uh, on Thursday. It took out a long term kind of 650 resistance here on the lead month with a rally through it. Took up Thursday and part of Friday. It did take some profit taking on Friday from its highs, but I think that the market's still going to be very, very focused here on the U.S. because around the world here, it looks like that lots of the prominent producers here aren't doing anything spectacular here. Uh, at this point, the Ukraine, Russia areas and that get solid crops, but nothing spectacular there. Europe's a similar situation. And then in the southern hemisphere, Argentina's anticipated to reduce its seedings, and Australia is really chirping about reducing their plantings for the coming year. At this point, we're right now back to maybe only a 28, 29 million metric ton from the recent 35, 37 million crop they've had. So that really got to that. And I think the wheat market is going to be a real important here going forward. If that continues to have issues, then I think that that's going to be a supporting factor for corn and soybeans as we go forward here. Soybeans on Friday, uh, kind of bounced back from a little bit of a pullback earlier in the week on things from the standpoint that the USDA's uh, was going to end up en- encouraging more. I shouldn't say they were encouraging, they were just anticipating that we could see some additional demand around the world here for U.S. soybeans in that case. But in general here, most of the time the U.S. markets were focused on uh, world wheat and U.S. wheat conditions. And actually another factor was that the USDA made quite a few announcements here concerning their reorganization and what they're going to do in the future here about surveys and things like that, which was some of the things we heard when I was at this data users meeting in Kansas City in midweek. And then we also had some comments during the industry outlook meeting that also occurred at the same time. So it was a good time to be out in the analytical world discussing things this week.
Yeah, so I think we have to jump into the wheat conditions. I have seen uh, pretty impressive reports about the drought in South Dakota, and there's report of drought of several areas in the plains as well. But in South Dakota was pretty impressive with people saying it's the worst drought in the last 40 years.
Hmm.
Um, but I think we can say that this crop will have an impact of this drier weather.
Oh, definitely. Uh, uh, South Dakota, uh, over the last 20 years, has kind of switched its attention from winter wheat and spring wheat production towards corn and soybeans on the eastern half of the state, and that it hasn't become isn't the big producing state that hasn't been in the past. North Dakota is still a huge spring wheat producer, but South Dakota was a winter wheat one. And exactly right. I think the conditions here that just mentioned in that kind of western half or western two-thirds of the U.S. winter wheat crop is not in good shape. And interestingly enough, and uh, uh, the there's indications that we're going to have a pretty a cautionary yield projection for that winter wheat crop. Could be down from last year, which turned out to be a pretty good year. I think it was like 53 bushels nationwide, something like that. Well, overall, the wheat crop was 53, and I think there's a possibility that the winter wheat crop could be down below 48, 49 bushels. Uh, and I think that that's could be a big factor when we get to the May 12th date when that is issued here. But right now, at least, I think the markets uh, will be focused on, I think, the U.S. more than any place else in the coming week here as the crop conditions actually, by the way, on nationwide dropped from 34% good and excellent, which is not a good level, down to 30% last Monday. So this coming Monday will be important. But the biggest problem right now of being able to take it down dynamically from this level is the fact that the Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, the big winter wheat areas already have their crop conditions at very poor levels, so they're not going to go down a lot, and so the percentage is not going to go down dramatic and good and excellent. That doesn't mean that the crop is improving. It just means it can't go much lower, which is kind of a bad twist if you think about it.
So what correction you are looking for the total sorry, the wheat crop in terms of its size in the United States?
Well, this is really kind of sticking out here 3 weeks from now before we get that data in that. But I would sense that there is uh, a chance that the USDA is going to be putting a number out there, as I said, in that 48, 49 bushel nationwide, and tighten up this carryover stock. This year it's been running at 900 and I suspect that not that the higher wheat prices encourages us to sell a lot more exports or anything like that, but I think the overall crop size is going to come down enough that we're going to tighten up our carryover stock. Uh, Not as tight maybe as it was a couple years ago after years of drought in the Southwest. And at that time, we were running Oh, geez, we're down close to 700 or less carryover stock. And but I think we will see that crop size move down. Uh, It'll be interesting as to what we start to get. And you're exactly right on. There's various areas in the country are starting to point out the fact that this crop is not greening up well. There isn't as many, plants out there because of the drought, things of that. And even the interesting other twist is in the Southwest, Texas particularly. In the past they'd have cattle out there wintering, then they'd take them off, and then a wheat crop would come along. Well, the high cost of uh, hay and things like that, they just kept utilizing the uh, wheat crop for their forage. And so now we don't, our harvested acres are going to go down on winter wheat. And that's going to be another part of why the U.S. crop production is going to go down. Uh, uh, We'll be getting that all together here in the next couple of weeks as to what our expectations are. But I would anticipate the fact that the production numbers that were put out, back in February and then adjusted because of the recent planting levels, will also tighten up pretty dramatically as we go towards that May 12th date for U.S. winter wheat production.
So, who do you think is going to drive the upside, given the fact that we farmers are starting to decide what they're going to plant in the United States, as far as corn and soybeans?
Well, definitely uh, the spring situation in that uh, the high cost of fertilizer is going to be a factor. I think it's going to trim the U.S. Uh, corn planting number that came out, which really was kind of issued before the impact of this energy uh, price increase that occurred here. Again, most of the survey results were in very early March for the March 31st plantings, and in this case, uh, now that that's pretty there, and there's no real big indications that there's going to be a huge, uh, even with Trump trying to promote some kind of uh, peace accord at this point. Even then, I don't sense that we're going to end up getting any kind of major pullback in energy prices. Uh, as the year goes on, I think he thinks that all of a sudden, if you Iran to buckle under, then all of a sudden the price of energy and things like that's going to go right back down. Yeah, I don't sense. Now, right now, we've got a huge amount of issues in the Straits of Hormuz. But anyway, going back to the corn scenario. Interestingly enough, at this conference we had, the Industry Outlook conference I was at. It's a kind of a association of uh, industry and university personnel that come together twice a year and have kind of projections about what they sense the U.S. crop conditions and production prospects will be. And interestingly enough, uh, I thought they might be a little conservative here on uh, shifts from the March 31st planning intentions. The corn and soybean guys, the corn guy thought it'd be down 500,000 or so from what was projected, which was, to my opinion, about 1 million too higher than the initial thoughts were on that. The U.S. farmers love to plant corn, so I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think the other thing is that a lot of corn producers also had their fall fertilizer on this kind of stuff. And so that's another factor, but that is already purchased in that. And to some extent, uh, there's been surveys done that about two-thirds of the inputs for corn are already on, and particularly fertilizer was already purchased in the Midwest, so that's makes some sense. But it wasn't really in the other areas, the Southeast, uh, and Delta, and so those areas there could have been some additional switches. I'm kind of anticipating we're going to be a lot closer to 1 million myself, but that's a switch from corn to soybeans, but both of them were only looking at 500,000 scenario from there. And so right now, at least, if this Mideast situation continues, and also the other thing that's kind of impacted the planning ideas is the fact that we have not had a very robust April planning period here, which tends to if you delay planting in corn in April because of weather, and that's really from eastern Nebraska all the way through till the northern areas, well, the northern half of Illinois and then parts of northern Indiana and Ohio. Excuse me. The Then there's a better chance that some of these acres being switched over to beans longer as the longer we get delays on that. We are projected to have another hefty rain here over the weekend uh, in the northern parts of the Midwest. We did have some pretty good rains, western Illinois, western Iowa, Missouri, and that on Thursday night, Friday this last week. And so, in general, once you get wet, you don't have to have this heavy duty rains every day to keep it wet. But in general, here, I think the planting conditions will be a big factor here that could switch further acres over from corn to beans here. Now, the biggest thing is when you put corn down, though, corn fertilizer down, you really don't have much choice. You have to go ahead with it because you can't utilize beans won't be able to utilize the high nitrogen and phosphates. Potash they can use, but they really don't. At this point, at least, weather will probably be the biggest factors going forward at this spring here in the Midwest as to how much additional switches might occur from corn to beans.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, it's going to be an interesting week ahead here. I think the weather situation in the Mideast, of course, will be the market's reaction to wheat, particularly is after its move above 650 this late this week, will be a real bell cow here as to how the markets will go here. I kind of anticipate with limited rains out here that that's going to find some more leadership and push and continue to advance above the 650 area that May was at. Now it's going to have things are going to switch out of May into July here early in the May period. So that the market will be watching that prices too. But I think the wheat market is interestingly enough in the classic sense of agricultural prices. Wheat can be your initial leader on overall prices, and this advancement above this long-term resistance at 650 could be quite a telling factor is here. Now, the spring plantings is always an emotional time. The one thing about that is, though, once you get kind of uh, concerned about it, and all of a sudden, boy, if you get past May 10th though and start to plant, things can back off. So keep that in mind on things as we go forward. Taking advantage of price advances, I think, and getting some marketings done on this thing because we still have a lot of supplies in our carryover stocks here in the U.S. So. The weather emotions for the new crop are important, but the amount of bushels we still have in the U.S. is still going to be a factor on our prices. So it'll be always has something to watch as we go forward. So let's keep an eye on lots of things here in the coming week.